All right, well, it is 10 a.m., so I will get started, but good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today's workshop will be focused on a more advanced video editing in Camtasia. So if you have attended our Camtasia and Snagit workshops last week, we provided more of a brief overview of the tools and some of the features that you could explore on your own, but today we are going to focus more on those advanced editing techniques and some other tools that I think would be helpful for you. And this session will also be recorded, so if you need to refer back to it, we'd be happy to share that with you. So let's get started. On today's agenda, I want to first focus on kind of taking us through the natural order you would probably go through when you're editing a video. So first, you would want to focus on your editing of the video. So we're going to go over some editing techniques such as trimming, splitting, and cropping, and then we'll look at some other settings you could explore. And then I'll kind of walk us through how to include a voice narration, so where you could add a script and where you would go to record that narration. And then we will walk into some of the different effects that you can add, such as intro and outro scenes, annotations, transitions, some of those effects. And then I will walk us through how to add closed captioning for accessibility purposes. That's going to be on your later end of the video creation. And then your final steps would be exporting and sharing. So today I'll talk about how to export it to YouTube and to Google Drive and how you can share them on there. So today's workshop is focused more on that kind of natural order you would go through. And then we have workshops coming up this week that are just on Snagit, which is our other TechSmith tool. But today we'll just be focused on Camtasia. And before we get started in Camtasia, I just wanted to share with you all some helpful tips for getting started and creating videos. So I always found that my best videos came when I planned and prepared for them. And that could just consist of jotting down some notes or developing a script for yourself if you're going to do a voiceover, or just picking out pictures or slides that you want to put in. Once you're prepared, then your video creation will go a lot more smoother. I also recommend, at least for instructional videos, try to keep those between 5 to 10 minutes. You could have a series of 5 minutes, but keeping them in smaller chunks I think are easier to watch and digest. And then for easy editing, I have some tips such as if you split your media clips and your script into chunks, you could then put those all together into a larger video, but you're able to work with one clip at a time, and you can record a little audio for each clip, and I think the chunking method is much easier. And then another thing is plan for those pauses when you're recording media, narration, etc. If you leave yourself some pauses in between, you could then go back in and edit it, but if you don't leave yourself that extra time, you can't add that time really back in. So if you plan for some pauses when you're recording, then you can go back in and edit those out, and you have more leeway with what you're including. And then lastly, adding effects in Camtasia can definitely increase engagement, but I would just recommend don't overdo it, because sometimes the effects can then become a distraction for students or whoever your audience is. So those are just some tips I found that work for me and that I found work for other people. So with that being said, let's just jump into Camtasia and get started with some of these more advanced editing techniques. So I will close out of this screen. And now you will all see my Camtasia screen. And again, this is the same screen you will see every time you open up a new project or an existing project. And I think most of you have seen my slide at the beginning, but if you do have specific questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but I will leave some time at the end of today's session to answer some comments or questions. So feel free to put those in the chat, but I will be answering those a bit later. So now let's just get started in Camtasia. Last week we kind of talked about this screen and some of the basics of Camtasia. And like I said, today's going to be more of that advanced look. So the first step you would always want to do is import your media. Again, you can record up here if you want to capture your screen, or if you've already recorded something, say in Blackboard Collaborate, you can just go ahead and import your media here. So for me, I already recorded something that I want to edit, so I'm going to click on Import Media, and then it should be in my downloads typically if it's a Collaborate video, and there's mine, and I'll just click on it, and then I will open it up, and it will drop right into my Camtasia media bin. And from here, you can continue to upload your, import your media, but say this is the only clip you want to use today, you can simply click on your track or your media clip, make sure it's highlighted yellow. That's how you know in Camtasia that you've selected something. So I'm going to click there, and then I will just drag it into my timeline. And when we talk about editing techniques and those more advanced tools, everything is pretty much going to be happening in your timeline, which is down below here. You'll see as I progress through today, different tracks will begin to layer up, and I'll kind of show you how to walk through those and how to navigate when you have different clips. But your first step is always going to be import your media first and then start editing. And the first things I want to talk about in terms of editing that may help you are, one, these, if you look at my track down here, there's these different like line or little, they're basically the audio lines that tell me the volume of my audio. So if you ever see like a long chunk that has none of that, that's basically I left a pause there. So now I could probably, if I just looked at it, I could say, oh, I need to edit that out, but I can always play it again and listen back. But that's just a helpful hint, is like if you knew you left a pause there, you don't have to listen through the whole thing. You can just look for those audio lines. But for today, like I said, we're going to talk about some editing techniques. So once you have your media in the timeline, you can begin editing. So the first one we're going to look at is the trimming feature of a video clip. And trimming basically means you're taking off some of your video either in the beginning or the end of the clip. So in order to trim, which is our first editing technique, you're first going to want to make sure you click on your video clip. So again, make sure it's that highlighted yellow line around it. And then if you want to trim something off the end, say my video ran too long, you're going to hover over the end of your clip and look for these double arrows on each side of the line. And then you can simply click and drag and say, oh, I need to trim off that at the end just to there. And you can always use your playhead, which is right here, to kind of see where you are in the video. Let me scroll in a little bit. This is your canvas. So this is where you always look to preview the video as well as add other features, which we will get into a little bit later. But if you want to preview your video, you can just take your playhead, scroll through. I kind of did a little demonstration of Blackboard in this video. And then you can see where you're editing. So let's just check. Did I trim off the right part? Yep. So then, and I can play this for you. It does have some audio, so you probably will hear that. Maybe. But that's basically how you trim off the end, and you can do it in the beginning as well. So you would hover over, look for your two arrows, and then you can trim off a chunk in the beginning. And the cool thing about trimming is that it doesn't actually delete it. So say, example, oh, I messed up and I need to go back. I could just pull it back out and it will still be there. So trimming is super helpful if your video ran longer and you just need to snip off the end, or if you had a very long pause in the beginning and you need to just cut that out, you can simply trim it and you'll be good to go. And like I said, it doesn't actually like completely delete it. So if you do need to pull it back and come and add some of that back in, you definitely have that option. So that's your first tool. Trimming, like I said, is just dragging at the front and the back of your video. Next, we have the split feature. So that's your second editing technique that I'm going to show today. And your split is up here in your editing toolbar. And as a recap, as I talked about in our last workshop, this is your editing tool. So you have the cut, which is the scissors, you can copy, paste, and then you have your split, which I will show us today. The split tool allows you to divide a longer clip into different sections. So to split, let's say I want to split this clip right here. And for today's video, I don't need to keep playing the video, but if you were doing this on your own, or for today's workshop, if you were doing this on your own, you can definitely keep playing the video and making sure you're on the right part. You can drag your playhead back and so on. But if I want to split this, all I would do is find the portion that I want to split the clip up into. So I can take either the red or the green part of my playhead, depending on what direction I'm going. I can click and drag, and then I could hit on the split tool, and then I can double click to get my playhead back, and then I have split my clip. So say I need to put something in the middle here on my timeline, I can easily split those two clips. I could also not drag. If I just click on my clip, I could drag my playhead and then also split it there. So those are the two ways that you could split up your clips. The split tool is very helpful. Like I said, if you need to insert another clip in between, or if you need to insert a slide or an image in between your video clips, the split feature is definitely helpful. So it's up here again in your editing toolbar. And our next one is going to be the stitch tool. So the stitch, which is represented by these scissors up here, and it's also the cutting the selection of the clip, allows you to delete sections of media and then stitch the clip together. So for example, I could, let's see if I can drag my playhead. Again, I can click here and say I just want to cut that section out. It cut that section out, but then it stitched my next part together. So the stitch tool allows you to combine clips and then cut out sections. And if you have any questions about these, feel free to put them in the comments and I can take a pause and walk us through one of these again. But just want to make sure I show you some of the techniques I think you will probably use the most. Of course, Camtasia has so many tools that you can definitely explore on your own, but I want to make sure I show you the most important ones today and make sure I highlight the key features I think you all would use on a daily basis. So that was our stitch tool. I think you could probably see it on your Collaborate screens, but you'll notice that when I did that, there was like a line that is now stitched. That's basically just telling me I cut out a section and then pieced those two together. And now our last editing technique I want to show us is simply how you can delete a chunk. So for example, let's say I actually want to delete this end of the clip. I can just highlight it like that, make sure I'm clicked, and then I can hit my delete button on my keyboard. So of course you can't see my keyboard, but all you would do, again, I can do it again, is just click on your clip, make sure it's highlighted, that yellow, and then you could either specify a certain clip or you can just delete the whole clip as well. And you'll notice that my timeline gets shortened and I would just need to drag my playhead back. So yeah, you would just use the delete your keyboard and you can easily delete any clip that you want. Again, this is your playhead and this is where you will want to drag it around to see where you are at in the video. Now let's say, for example, I've dragged this and then, oh, I dragged that, and now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't actually want to delete that. You may notice that if you start clicking off of it, you can't really get that to get off of that highlighted part. All you would do is just double click on your playhead and it brings everything back together and then you can go from there. So I'll demonstrate that again. Say I was going to delete this, but then I decided that part, but then I don't want to actually do any of that. All I would do is just look for my arrow, double click on the playhead right here, and it will bring everything back together. I have found this to be super helpful because if you may find yourself getting stuck and you can't get off of it, all you do is just that double click. So those are some of your basic editing techniques in terms of like splicing or splitting, cutting the clip, and so on. But you do have a few other techniques you could use as well. The first one I want to talk about is actually cropping the video clip on your screen. So let's say I have a portion of my video like right here, maybe. I realized, I don't really want this lower part of my window displayed and maybe the upper part. All I would do is click on my clip in the canvas, and then you have some tools at the top. So you have your arrow, the hand, and then the crop. If I click on the crop, it displays these little squares that you would probably see when you're cropping an image. And from there, I can just drag my canvas and crop what's on my screen. So that's how you actually crop the display that's on your canvas. And then if I want to save it, I can just click off of it, and then it's cropped. And now let's say I just want to change the background of my canvas. I would click here, and I showed this in our last workshop last week, but you could go right-click, Project Settings, and then I could change the background of my canvas. I could say I want to use the eyedropper tool and match it to this color on my screen. I could do that. Or I could just pick a color and then click off and apply. And that's how you edit your actual clip in the canvas. So again, if I want to crop, I would just click on my clip, make sure my crop tool is green and highlighted, and then I would just drag accordingly on my actual clip. If I need to get something back, I can just undrag it, and then it would uncrop. So now that we've talked about cropping, that's your other editing tool. But you also have the extend frame editing technique. So let's say I actually need this clip to be a little bit longer. I could come back down to my timeline and say I need it to be a little bit longer at the end. I can drag my playhead, click on my clip as it is highlighted here, and then I can right-click on it on your mouse, and then you'll see a bunch of other properties. Here, I could use the extend frame technique. And the extend frame allows you to extend your video clip so that it lasts a little bit longer. So let's say I need this clip to be just a bit longer so that I can finish up explaining something. I would click extend frame, and then you can choose the duration that you want it to last. Say I just need 5 more seconds to explain something. You can add the duration by using these up and down arrows, and then you can click OK. And this just extends your clip by a couple more seconds so that you don't have to re-record everything if you are doing a voiceover or something. You can just allow yourself a little bit more time, and your clip can be just extended a little bit. So as I said, this allows you a little bit more time to kind of explain something or add in those annotations or whatnot that you need. So that was the extend frame technique. Again, you would click on your clip, right click, and then look for that extend frame option. Now, the last editing technique I want to show us is just some of the other properties and settings you have that you can explore on your own. So if you are looking for something that you don't see on your toolbar, you can right click again on your highlighted clip, and then you'll see again a bunch of options. You could cut the video, you could copy the clip, delete the whole thing from there. You could separate the audio and video. Say I was actually talking in my video, but now I just want my screen recording, I could click there. And now I just have my clip, and then I have my audio separated. And you'll notice that when I did that, another track has been layered on top. And this is where you can, again, adjust where those fall. But I'm going to keep my video my audio and video together. So I'm going to hit undo, and then it will all come back together. So I just wanted to show you that if you do right click on it, you have some other options as well that you could explore. There's also the add clip speed if you want a clip to go faster or slower, and so on. So there's a lot of different editing tools and techniques that you can explore on your own, but those are just some of the few that I wanted to walk us through today in terms of actually editing that clip. So now let's say I want to move into adding a voice narration. Say I recorded my screen like it is here, but there's no narration, but I want to explain something to my students about how to find the enrollment verification quiz, for example. You can easily add a voiceover or voice narration, as Camtasia calls it, by looking to your left-hand side in your Tools panel. And again, your Tools panel is here on the left-hand side. This is where you will find pretty much all the different features, effects, and other tools that you will be needing when you're editing a video. So I would say typically your voice narration could be your next step in editing your video. You know, you cut up your video, you made it perfect on how you want it to look, but now you want to explain something to your students in a more clear way rather than trying to narrate on the fly. So if I want to add a voice narration, I can click here, and now you have this box that has opened. The first things you're going to want to check is, one, if you have the correct microphone chosen. You may have a mic built into your computer or your desktop. You might have one in your webcam, or maybe you have a headset like I use and you have a microphone there. So you have the option to choose which one. And this is important if you are recording narration, because if you have a headset on but you choose the webcam one, the audio won't be as clear. So that's the first thing to check. And then the next thing to check is whether or not your microphone is working. And that's how you can tell by this green bar that's moving. If I talk louder, it will reach the end. And if I'm whispering, then it will not go as far. So that's kind of how you can tell if your mic's working and where your volume is at. The next option you have for voice narration is this checkbox here. You can check and uncheck it, and it says mute timeline during recording. So if you do have audio in your video, that's just other types of audio that isn't necessarily you speaking, but you don't want it to distract you during it. If you're playing the video and matching it up, you can mute that. That's typically what I do. And then another cool feature of this voice narration box is the fact that you could add a script here. And as I said in the beginning, I always find it helpful, even if it's a short video, just to either jot down a quick little script or at least some notes about what you want to say to your students in your narration. And this is something that will be layered on top of your clip so that students can watch the screen and then hear your voice as well. So in this box, you could just paste your script or type it in here as well. You can just start typing there. And then you can actually just read your script as you go. So let's say I need to narrate this. All I would do is read my script from here, click on Start Voice Recording, and it would just start right away. I won't do that today because it will be double audio of me speaking and then recording narration, but it's pretty simple. If you've never done recordings before, it may take a little bit of practice just to get comfortable with it, but setting up the voice narration in Camtasia, I think, is really just those two steps. Is if you want a script, you can put it in there and just go ahead and start your recording. And you can try this as many times as you want. You don't have to save every recording. You can just delete it until you find the one that you like. And you could also, another helpful tip is kind of just to, like I said in the beginning, if you have clips of videos, you could record your narration in just clips. So I could click it and start it and just show you all. But you'll see that my voiceover is starting, and then when I'm done, I can just hit stop. It would save it if I want it saved. And then it will put it right in where I recorded it. So you don't have to feel like you have to record the entire narration all at once. You can do it in chunks like I had mentioned in the beginning. But if I don't want that recording, I could just simply highlight it, click it, and delete. But narration, I think, takes the pressure off of you trying to just wing it while you're recording your screen or recording your collaborate. You can definitely do that if you are prepared, but if you do want to make a more cleaner narration, the voice narration option is definitely a cool tool to use. So that, I think, would be your second step in the video creation process. But now let's say that you have edited your video, you have included your voice narration, and everything is kind of starting to get pieced together. The next thing, I think, which I find the most fun, is adding in your effects. So transitions and annotations and intro scenes, which I will show us right now. So that's your kind of natural progression, is once the video is looking kind of cleaned up and ready to go, you can start adding in those effects to kind of add those finishing, more polished touches. So the first thing I want to show us today is how to add an intro or like introductory scene. So if you attended our workshop last week, I talked in detail about the library, but I'll give us a quick recap today, where the library is where Camtasia offers you a bunch of cool features for free, so you don't have to worry about any copyright issues. You can look in all of these folders for a whole bunch of cool effects and different backgrounds and music tracks, and you can put those in your videos, and you don't have to worry about any copyright issues if you do share them with students or other faculty and so on. But let's say I do want to add an intro scene, and I'm going to go into detail today on how to actually edit a scene, but let's just say I want to add an intro scene here. Let me just edit this little part out so that it kind of starts right away. So your first step is, if you want to add one of these intro scenes, and I'll click on one just so you can see what these are, but these are cool for just introducing a video to students with a title, and these can all be edited. So I will show those to you. But let's say I do want to add my intro scene in. The first thing you would do is, if you want it to play first, you are going to want to drag your video clip a little bit to the side so that you have some space up here to work with. And it goes in kind of that sequential order, so this is always going to be the beginning of your video and so on. So if I want to add something in here at the very beginning, I would just want to drag my clip and then I can pick from these. So let's just say let's say I want to go with this one I just clicked on. And again, you can click on any of them to preview without actually dragging into your video. But let's say I want to use that one. All you're going to do is click and then drag and drop it right into your timeline. So again, click and then drag and drop. And then I would put it in the beginning of my video. If I want to add that intro scene, it's going to, like I said, you're going to want to move your clip a little bit to the side so that you have some space to work with, and then you can drag your clip back together, and then there you have your intro scene to start. But now let's say I want to edit this actual scene. I can click on it, again, to highlight the clip here. You're always going to want to make sure it's highlighted yellow. And then you will see this properties toolbar to the right pop up. This is where you can customize these intro scenes. So for example, you have the title, which you can adjust. You have a subtitle and another subtitle. So if you want to edit these, you would just simply type in here and say, maybe this was an introduction to Blackboard that you were giving your students. Just type that in there, and then you'll notice that it starts to edit it on the screen. But again, I want to make some more adjustments. So I would click again at the bottom in my timeline to select that intro scene. And then I'm going to come back here, and let's say maybe I just want to put CFCC up here, and then maybe I want to take this one out. You could just delete it, and then you'll see it starts editing it up here. So now you have a few other options. You can click on the little A to adjust the text properties. So you can change the font. And again, Camtasia gives you pretty much a very wide variety of the different fonts, so you can play around with those and so on. So that's where you would adjust your actual fonts. If you need to adjust the font size, you can just scroll here, or you can change it over here to the right. And then you can also adjust whether you want to keep it regular, italics, bold, and so on. And you could just click on those and play around with it. And this is where I think it gets very creative in Camtasia, because it pretty much gives you the possibility to customize any of these intro scenes, but pretty much any of the different features or graphics you include, you can pretty much customize them. So again, down here in our properties, we could actually end up changing the colors if we want. So if I wanted to change that box up here, I could. Even if I wanted to change the background, I could, and so on. And then if I need to kind of preview what it's going to look like, I could drag my playhead back, and then I can click on this play and pause button to see what my intro scene now looks like. And I think these are a little more exciting. I mean, you could, of course, do like a PowerPoint slide too if you just want to display that, but I think these might add a little bit more engagement for your videos, and they give that more like professional touch without, once you get a little bit of a gist of it, it kind of looks super professional, but it didn't really take too much time to actually edit those. So I do think that is super cool as well. So you're always going to want to look out for that properties panel that pops up to the right if you are looking to customize some of these features. So that was the first one I want to talk about, was those intro scenes. Same thing, you could have an outro scene if you want to do a similar thing and end your video. You have that option as well. But again, you can drag it to see how it looks and so on. And then it usually fades out. Sorry, my audio from the video is going to start playing, but I think that is a super cool feature that you should definitely look into exploring as well. But again, look for that properties panel over there. And you have some other different settings you could play with. So now the next feature I want to, or effect I want to go into more depth in, is the transitions, which is again to the left in your tools panel. Transitions are very similar to those in PowerPoint or Google Slides. They pretty much piece together your video clips, so there's a smoother transition between the two. If I do want to drag a transition in, all you're going to do is click on one, make sure it's highlighted yellow, and you'll notice that when I'm hovering over it, you can see a little bit of a preview. So you don't have to click on them all or test them all out. You can just see what it would look like from there. So let's say I want to drag this one in. You'll see that my clips start to get like a highlighted yellow, and then I can just drag it to whatever clip I want. And you'll notice that if I separate those, you have a bit of a teal bar now on that end, and then a teal bar on this end. And it looks like it added it to my intro as well. If I didn't want that to happen, I would have had just to separate them a little bit more and then add them in there. And you can click on those if you want to make the transition last longer. You can drag it. So to do that, you would hover over your transition bar, look for those little arrows, click on it, make sure it's highlighted yellow, and then you can drag the transition. Oh, make sure I got that one. And then you can make it longer or shorter. So let's just preview that really quick. And now you see it has transitioned. And now it's just replaying. But the transitions are, I think a way to seamlessly blend together your clips so that they don't look as choppy, if you do use the method of kind of chunking your clips up for the sake of your editing, for the ease of editing, adding those transitions will quickly piece together everything and make it look very professional looking throughout, so there isn't any abrupt pauses or whatnot. But transitions, again, you have many options, and it's again fairly simple. You would just click and drag like I demonstrated, and then look for the clip to be highlighted, and then you would just drag it down there. But if you don't want it, like I just showed here, if you say, oh, I don't want this one, you can just place it back in there and it will fall in without moving to your clip or whatnot. So now let's move into going into detail on how to add these annotations and graphics. So annotations, just as a little recap, I typically use them if, say, I forgot to say something in my narration or I forgot to show something. You could kind of add a little, let's say I want to put something there. You can add these speech bubbles or arrows to kind of emphasize something, and you don't have to go back in and worry about redoing your whole voice narration. If you just forgot to say one little note, you could add like a little bubble in there with text, and then students or whoever your audience is could read that as they watch. So I will demonstrate that for us now. Let's say I needed to say something about this quiz on the screen. I can click on here and then drag my annotation in. And I'll adjust the properties of everything, but let's just say I needed to say something like, this is where your quiz is located. But maybe I didn't say that in my narration, but I want to make sure I point it out here. This is when the annotations would be helpful. And you'll notice that, again, to the right, you have a properties panel that appears when you pretty much edit or not edit, when you drop something in, any object that you drop in will then allow you to edit the properties. So let's start up here in our properties panel for editing these annotations. You first have the visual properties. So if I click there, this allows you to adjust the size easily. You could adjust the rotation, the position, the width, and so on. So that's more of the actual visual size. You'll notice that if I'm cropping there, it's cropping because I have my crop tool, but if I just click on my arrow, I can adjust that as well. I can adjust the speech bubble and so on. So let's just say I needed to say something about this. I could drag it and so on. So you can play with that. Again, make sure you have your arrow clicked when you're working with annotations. But if I click on it again, you'll notice that every time I click on my object, let me demonstrate that again. If I click off of it, my properties panel disappears. When I click back on it, my property panel appears again. So next we have the text properties. This is where you can, again, change your font. You can adjust the style of it, size, and so on. And then the color font as well. If I needed to do that, I could. Again, these are going, once you know where everything is located and you have a bit more of a better idea of what the properties panel allows you to do and so on, you can definitely explore this a lot more in detail on your own to customize it to your liking. But the last one we have is the annotation properties, which allows you to quickly change the shape. So let's say, I actually wanted it to be that bubble, or maybe I needed it to be an arrow. You can quickly change those without having to redo everything, which I think is awesome. You could also change the color. And for this, I think using this eyedropper tool is very helpful, because let's say I wanted to match it to something on the screen. Let's say, I want to match it with this navy up here in this arrow. All I would do is click on my eyedropper, click there, and you'll notice that it automatically changes my color of the bubble. This allows everything to be pretty uniform and matching if you like that kind of style, where it picks the exact color, which I always like doing. It kind of ties everything together. And then lastly, you can continue to play around with these, different widths, thickness, outlines, and so on. And then you can preview, and you'll notice that now it starts to add to my timeline here. And the annotation will only appear where my playhead was. So you'll notice that when I start to approach this area, now my annotation appears because that's where I had my playhead at. And for these, you can also add transitions. Let's say I wanted to add a transition to my annotation as well. You could do that as well. And then it kind of fades in or transitions in a little bit more nicer. And this is where everything starts to layer. If you want things to be appearing at the same time and on the same screen, that's where you will allow the layering to happen. Camtasia pretty much naturally does this on its own, but you can obviously kind of adjust those as you want and play around with the layers. But if you do drag something in on the screen, it will pretty much just continue to layer as it should. But back to annotations, we have a few more that I will just point out. You have the arrows, you have these other shapes. You also have the blur and highlight. So say, for example, you want to highlight something on your screen or kind of emphasize it, you could again drag that down there and then adjust those as you want. And you'll notice that pretty much all of these little objects and features all appear with those little circles or squares on the corners, and that is just telling you that you can drag and adjust the size. As you probably would see in like Word or PowerPoint or any of those other softwares where it lets you kind of adjust the text box or the image, it's pretty much the same idea here where you can edit these features. And then you'll notice that now it starts to layer this as well. And I didn't have to really do anything. So I could play that and it will start to do all of that on its own. And if I didn't want that, I could just click and delete, and now it's back to how I originally had it. And then lastly, you have some sketches you could include, and then some other callouts. But annotations, again, you can customize as well and kind of play around with the features and really just utilize what you think is most helpful for your class or your audience and so on. Now, the other one I wanted to quickly show us a little bit more in detail is just the graphics that you could include. So again, back to the library, you can click on these icons. And you pretty much have a very wide assortment of things you can add. I demonstrated this a little bit last week, but graphics are really helpful for just kind of adding a little bit more to your video. And again, these are all free, so you don't have to worry about copyright issues or finding clip art online or anything like that. So let me demonstrate how to add him or how to add a graphic in again. You would just look to your folder. So you can click on that drop down arrow, click, and then again, it's going to be that drag and drop. So I'm going to drag and then make sure that my arrow is selected. Then I will move down here and I can just play around with the size again with these little circles on the corners. And then I can look for that 4 arrow to move it around and so on. And everything will just pretty much just start layering on top of each other. And like I said, you don't really have to worry about playing around with the layers. You can if you want, but you don't have to really worry about that. So those are just some of the features or effects that I wanted to highlight. I think annotations are super helpful, transitions, voice narration, and so on. So now in these couple last minutes, I just want to talk about closed captioning, which is very important, and then how to export and share your videos. So in order to add closed captionings for accessibility purposes, you are wanting to make sure your videos are ADA compliant, you would want to click on the captions option in the left tools panel. If I click here, it explains that I could import a caption file, or I can add my own captions. But if you look to the gear icon, you have the ability to do speech to text, which is what I would recommend. It is pretty much creating automated captions for your video based on the audio in the media clips. So I will demonstrate that. Again, clicking on that captions toolbar tool in the panel, and then look for the gear in the upper left. Here, you will want to click speech to text. It will give you some tips. You can read through those, basically just making sure your microphone is set up. And you could do more of the voice training and adding words, but you don't really need to do any of that. You can just hit continue once you read through them. And then it will pretty much just start transcribing your audio to text. It may take a little bit. If you have like a 20-minute video, it might take a bit longer, but mine was only about a minute, so it was pretty quick. And now you'll notice that every caption is tied to a timestamp in your timeline. And that track is just layered at the very top. Again, you can just leave that track there of all your captions. You don't really need to play around with where that is located. But you can drag your playhead back to the beginning. Let's go here instead. And now I just want to show us how we can actually edit these. So you'll notice that I think the punctuation and the actual spelling of the words tend to be pretty accurate in Camtasia. But just in case the software didn't pick up a word, for example, let me see if I can find one. Yeah, so this one, I was saying CFCC portal. So I can just click on my caption. So I'm going to go to my left-hand bar in my captions, click, and then I can just go ahead and edit in here. Highlight like you would in anything, and then just type on my keyboard, and you can edit that, and then you can test it out there, and then you'll notice that your captions are automatically put in the bottom of each video. And like I said, these are fairly accurate, so you may just need to go in and adjust some punctuation and so on. But you really don't have to do much besides that, because it does automatically generate all of those captions. So definitely take advantage of that tool, because even when you upload this to YouTube or something, the captions are there as well. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that. And so now the last part of today's video is that I want to walk us through in more detail on how to export to YouTube and share to Google Drive and so on. Because I think those are probably the two places you will most likely store your videos. You can also just download the video file, have it on your computer, but for easily sharing it, you most likely will want to try to use YouTube or Google Drive. So in order to do that, you're going to go up here to the export button in the upper right-hand corner, click there, and now you have several options, which is the local file if you just want the video file. But let's say I want to do YouTube. Let me click there. Now here, let's take a deeper look at all of these different boxes. First, you have your title, which allows you to edit the title in YouTube. You can change that. That's the title that will appear in YouTube. You can also add a description here, which again is the description that will appear in YouTube. If you're familiar with YouTube, you can actually go back in and edit the title and description once you're on YouTube, but this kind of saves you an extra step in editing. Then you have your privacy settings. So you have public, private, unlisted. Public allows anyone to see it, private allows only those you share it with, and unlisted allows anyone with the link to view it. And then the most important part here is making sure that you check the upload captions. If you do not check that box, all the captions we just created will not appear on YouTube, and you won't have that option to include the closed captioning feature. So you're going to want to make sure that if you do add them in Camtasia to upload the captions by checking that box. And then all you would do is click finish, and I won't do that because it will basically just take me out of Camtasia and it will start rendering the video. But you will click finish and allow some time for the video to render, and then you can go back into YouTube, refresh your page, and your video should be on your channel. And the last thing I want to point out is that you will just want to make sure that you are signed into your CFCC or other Gmail channel account so that it is paired up to your YouTube. Mine is already signed in, so there's not an option, but if you have not signed in yet, you will just see an option instead of sign out, sign in to your account. But let me hit cancel for that. That's pretty much the only steps for YouTube. And then you also have the Google Drive, which allows you to pretty much, again, make sure you're signed into your CFCC Google Drive. If you are not, it will just walk you through some steps on how to sign in. And then again, the title you can adjust here, and then you can choose what folder. Google Drive is automatically including a TechSmith folder in the drive, but if you would like to save these videos elsewhere, you can do so by clicking on that Browse button, and then you can choose a different folder. And then for the Google Drive, you would pretty much just hit finish, and you would be good to go to share that link with students or other faculty, and so on. So I will also hit cancel here. So at this point, I just want to recap, and then I will leave some time for questions. But today we did take a look at those advanced editing techniques, and I would recommend that you definitely try those out on your own. Again, play around with those down here. And TechSmith, the company, has a lot of great Camtasia and Snagit tutorials. So if you're interested in a kind of a closer look at every single one of those tools, I would definitely check out their website because they do a great job of honing in on certain tools and doing like a 2-minute video on that. So that's definitely a resource I would check out. But I would play around with those editing techniques, and then maybe explore the voice narration like we talked about, and then playing around with those effects I think will be a lot of fun for you all. And remember that properties panel to the right allows you to really customize everything, pick the color, text, and so on. And then your last steps, like we just talked about, would be making sure that before you share your video, you have those captions for accessibility purposes, and then you would go ahead and share your video. So that's all I have today for the actual content. We have about 7 minutes left, so if you do have any comments or questions or need me to demonstrate something, I'll stick around for a little bit, but if not, thank you all for joining us today.